When your political legacy includes losing 2 leadership elections and being compared to David Miliband, you know you've got some serious baggage to unpack. But Andy Burnham, bless his relentless ambition, might be about to roll the dice one more time, and honestly, the potential for spectacular success or catastrophic failure has never been higher. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where today we're diving into what could be the most high-stakes political gamble since Theresa May decided calling a snap election was a brilliant idea. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Andy Burnham's eyeing a return to Westminster. Keir Starmer's reportedly got his people frantically trying to stop him, and there's a very real possibility that Reform UK could turn this whole thing into the most humiliating moment of Burnham's political career. Buckle up, because this one's got more twists than a pretzel factory. Let's start with some brutal honesty about Andy Burnham's track record, because context matters when we're talking about whether someone's about to successfully challenge for Labour leadership. Burnham's been in this exact position before, twice. In 2010, he ran for Labour leader and dropped out in the first round like a contestant on a reality show who realizes they're out of their depth. In 2015, he tried again and lost to Jeremy Corbyn, which must have stung particularly badly because Corbyn wasn't even supposed to be a serious contender. He was on the ballot to provide balance, to give the left a voice, and then he won the whole thing while Burnham watched his leadership dreams evaporate for the second time. Now, the article we're looking at today draws some absolutely delicious historical parallels. Remember David Miliband, Labour's golden boy, the chosen one, the guy who had multiple opportunities to oust Gordon Brown in 2008 but bottled it every single time. When his chance finally came after Labour lost power in 2010, he lost the leadership election to his own brother Ed in what remains one of the most awkward family dynamics in British political history. David hasn't been seen in frontline politics since. He's off doing international development work, probably trying very hard not to think about what might have been. Then there's James Purnell, another cabinet minister under Brown, another person tipped as a future Labour leader. He quit in spectacular fashion in 2009, trying to trigger a coup against Brown, failed completely, and then stepped down as an MP less than a year later. His political career was over before it really began, killed by bad timing and miscalculation. What connects all these nearly men, these political might-have-beens? They all sat around the cabinet table with Andy Burnham back in the noughties, all being talked about as Labour's next generation of leaders. Miliband's gone, Purnell's gone, and Burnham's the last one standing, still chasing that leadership dream like it's the last helicopter out of Saigon. The question everyone in Westminster's been obsessing over since Andrew Gwynn announced his departure is simple. Will Andy stand, and will Keir let him? Those two questions are intrinsically linked because Burnham can't just waltz into the Gorton and Denton by-election without Labour's blessing. The party's executive committee, which is conveniently stuffed full of Keir Starmer loyalists, has to approve candidates. So even if Burnham desperately wants to stand, even if he thinks this is his moment, he needs permission from people who have absolutely zero interest in making Starmer's life more difficult by allowing a potential leadership challenger back into Parliament. This is where it gets properly interesting, because blocking Burnham creates its own problems. If the party machine visibly prevents a popular, successful mayor from standing in a by-election in his own region, that looks controlling. That looks like Starmer's scared of internal competition. That looks like the kind of top-down authoritarianism that Labour spent years criticizing the Tories for. You'd have Labour members and MPs asking why Andy Burnham, who's governed Greater Manchester successfully and won elections there, isn't allowed to stand for Parliament. The optics are terrible, and optics matter in politics. But if they don't block him, if Burnham gets on that ballot as the Labour candidate, Starmer gets a different nightmare scenario. Because there's no guarantee Burnham actually wins. Labour holds Gorton and Denton with a majority of 13,000 from the general election, which sounds comfortable until you remember that Labour's support has plunged nationally, and Reform UK is absolutely surging. Reform just won a by-election in a Welsh Labour stronghold. They're eating into Labour's vote share across northern and working-class constituencies. The political landscape has shifted dramatically since the general election, and a 13,000 majority that looked rock-solid 6 months ago suddenly doesn't feel quite so safe. Imagine the scenario. Andy Burnham, former cabinet minister, successful mayor, the king of the north himself, returns to contest a by-election in Greater Manchester. It should be a coronation. It should be a triumphant return to Westminster. Except Reform UK runs a proper campaign, Nigel Farage shows up and does his thing, votes split in unpredictable ways, and Burnham loses. Not just loses narrowly, but loses to Reform in a Labour seat. The humiliation would be nuclear. His political career wouldn't just be over, it would be cremated, scattered, and then forgotten. He'd go from potential Labour leader to cautionary tale. The man who lost 3 times, who couldn't even win a by-election in his own backyard when he was the famous candidate everyone knew. That's the gamble Burnham faces, and it's genuinely high risk. The reward, if he wins, is a seat in Parliament, proximity to power, the ability to challenge Starmer when the moment is right. But the risk, if he loses, is complete and utter political annihilation. No coming back from that. No third act. Just retirement and the eternal what-if of a career that promised so much and delivered leadership defeats and one catastrophic by-election loss. The article points out another massive obstacle, which is that even if Burnham wins the seat, he still needs backing from Labour MPs to actually challenge Starmer for the leadership. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Burnham hasn't exactly endeared himself to the current crop of Labour parliamentarians. Last year, ahead of Labour's convention, he faced backlash from dozens of Labour MPs over suggestions he might mount a coup. They weren't happy then, and that animosity hasn't magically disappeared. MPs have long memories, and they remember who was positioning themselves as an alternative before the party even won the election. Labour sources quoted in the article say the problem with Burnham is that it's always about Andy Burnham. That's a devastating line, because it cuts to the heart of how he's perceived by colleagues, not as a team player, not as someone who's loyally serving the party's interests, but as someone whose primary motivation is his own advancement. Fair or not, that reputation is politically toxic when you need those same colleagues to back you in a leadership contest. Why would MPs support someone they think is in it for himself? This is the brutal arithmetic Burnham has to calculate. He needs to win the by-election, which isn't guaranteed, then he needs to build support among MPs, many of whom already distrust him, then he needs to wait for the right moment to challenge Starmer, which might not come for years, during which time he'd be sitting on the backbenches being watched constantly for any sign of disloyalty. It's a long, difficult path with multiple failure points, and at the end of it, he might still not get what he wants. The timing issue here is crucial because politics, as the article correctly notes, is all about timing. Grab your chance and reap the rewards. Hesitate and you're dead. David Miliband hesitated in 2008 and never recovered. James Purnell moved too soon in 2009 and destroyed his career. The question for Burnham is whether this moment, right now, early 2026, with Starmer struggling and Reform surging, is his time, or whether it's another trap waiting to swallow his ambitions. There's an argument that this is precisely the right moment. Starmer's vulnerable, Labour's hemorrhaging support in exactly the working-class northern seats that Burnham claims to represent, and the party needs someone who can connect with voters who are drifting to Reform. Burnham's got name recognition, he's got a track record as mayor, he's got a compelling narrative about standing up for forgotten communities. If he can win the by-election convincingly, despite Reform's challenge, that demonstrates he's got electoral appeal that Starmer lacks. It proves he can win in the current environment, not just in the historical Labour landslide of the general election. But there's an equally strong argument that this is terrible timing. Starmer's got a massive parliamentary majority, there's no mechanism to remove him quickly even if MPs wanted to, and mounting a challenge now just looks like disruptive ambition rather than principled disagreement over direction. If Burnham fails, if he loses the by-election or wins narrowly and then can't build parliamentary support, he's finished. And at 50-something years old, this is realistically his last shot. There won't be another opportunity in 5 or 10 years. This is it. The article mentions that Labour wants the by-election held quickly, with a candidate possibly in place by next week. That compressed timeline is deliberate. The party leadership doesn't want weeks of speculation, media coverage, and internal debate about whether Burnham should stand. They want a candidate selected fast, preferably someone loyal and uncontroversial, and the whole thing wrapped up before it becomes a major story. Speed is their friend because it limits Burnham's ability to build public pressure for his candidacy